We're going to do this again. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. First of all, I'll start by apologizing. I wasn't making a grand entrance by coming to the stage when everyone else was here. I only arrived a few hours ago, and I did my best to get here as soon as I could. Thank you very much to the Challenges Forum and to USI for the invitation and for also giving us the opportunity to sit here and discuss. To respond to the question that I had, I'll start off by touching briefly on the presentations that we got from the previous panelists and bringing in sort of a youth perspective to it, and then complementing that with the complexities of youth participation in peace building and peacekeeping, and then finally how the UN and the AU can practically partner to ensure that there's representation, but also local buy-in of peace initiatives within our respective countries and internationally. So firstly, when the panelists spoke under Secretary General Mr. Lacroix, he spoke about fake news and disinformation, and that is critical, particularly because of the number of youth that actually use social media platforms. And that is just one of the reasons why we cannot afford to continuously have peace conversations without youth being represented. Apart from misinformation and disinformation, we also heard from Assistant Secretary General Elizabeth, who spoke about financing in fragile states, and particularly from the African context. And it came to me as not a surprise that only 10% went into peace building, and just a fraction of that, which is 4%, actually went into conflict prevention. And the reason that is the case is because peace building must be understood as a complex issue that is related to other aspects of development, particularly economics. So if you're living in a context or in a country where there are issues such as starvation, and it becomes difficult to prioritize peace building and peacekeeping. So in response to that, I would say that peace building and conflict resolution must be understood in the broader perspective of development goals, where none can succeed when the other one is not prioritized. So there's need to collectively prioritize development goals. Now, to speak specifically to the complexities of youth participation when it comes to peace building and peacekeeping, it is a very high level or very protocol guarded space. For instance, in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado province, the first instance when the insurgencies started was to send the military. And we see that reflective of our responses to conflicts across the continent. It's either there's a high level engagement between presidents, between ministers, and at the very end, we see then inclusion of different stakeholders. But what that does is that it doesn't respond to conflicts, because we're seeing this sort of changing nature of conflicts, where young people are participating in conflicts, not simply because they believe in some ideology, but their economic incentives, and there's high unemployment, and then young people resort to joining an insurgency group to make up for that economic shortcoming. So I think there is high need to actually engage young people at the onset of conflict. Speaking about reintegration and disarmament of young people who have joined these extremist groups, we're able to take their peers and they dialogue with them and find out why they joined insurgency groups. And I'm happy to see Mr. David from ISS, because the Institute for Security Studies actually conducted a study on youth extremism in Southern Africa. And this is one of their findings, that there's actually economic incentives given to young people to participate. And for that reason, we cannot continue to sideline or be exclusive when it comes to resolving conflicts. Otherwise, we're just dealing with sort of the symptoms and not really the root causes of why people are engaging in conflict. Now, finally, just looking at some of the solutions to the issues I raised, and that is where a direct response to the question that was posed by Ambassador Abdel-Latif comes in. It is, how can there be meaningful partnerships so that these shortcomings we're seeing in responding to conflicts in our different regions can be addressed? And the first is, I think I am justified in saying there's over partnering with NGOs. And we have seen several times the civil society organizations as a panacea to several development challenges that we have. And by so doing, especially from the African context, there's alienation of the role of the state and the role that governments can play. Yet we're gearing towards local ownership of initiatives, local buy-in of peacekeeping operations and peacekeeping missions. But I would say in response to what you highlighted, Assistant Secretary General Elizabeth, it is that we need to be intentional about partnering with governments. And governments should be the ones as a state or as an entity that communicates the NGOs that are operating within their country. Granted that governments have got their own challenges and the relationship with citizens is not always clear or not always a rosy relationship. But I think what partnering with governments does is that it legitimizes peace building initiatives and peacekeeping initiatives. And not only that, it serves to strengthen the relations between UN entities or international entities such as the African Union or the United Nations with the governments and then with the people. So the reestablishment of that legitimacy of the government as an entity within the country. Apart from that, it also allows for policy continuity, because oftentimes when we partner with NGOs, tomorrow that NGO does not operate in a specific country. What do? We find another organization to partner with. We pump funds into that organization until it can't sustain itself, and we continuously repeat that. But by partnering with the national government, we're looking at longer term policies that can be continued despite shifts in terms of who is in charge of that entity. So in a nutshell, I think that is the response to how this partnership can be enhanced to ensure that there's policy continuity, but also legitimacy of different peace building and peacekeeping initiatives. And in terms of formulating the new agenda for peace, I've mentioned in my opening statement that this cannot be done without inclusive of not only young people, but persons with disabilities and also persons from marginalized and minority communities. And then finally, I will refer to the words of the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, who said, the objectives of development, human rights and security must be pursued together, otherwise none will succeed. Thank you very much.